So we are here on this lovely, sweltering July afternoon, and I can't believe it's July. First of all, we were past Independence Day, and this is our first connecting with the coach. Exciting stuff. So we decided, we had this whole conversation about We Got This Wednesday. We still got this, but letting We Got This Wednesday as a gathering of the B2L community, putting that on hiatus for the summer, but still wanted to have some connection, have some connection with them. So Connecting with the Coach is this new video series. I'm excited.
Me too.
Yes. So let's talk about what you've been up to lately. This has been a couple weeks since We Got This Wednesday, the 5 for 5 social media challenge. So you went through 5 days and 5 ways for inner self-care.
Yes, so the 5 ways in 5 days, that challenge, the video series challenge, it went really well. I focused on caring for your inner self as opposed to, sometimes we look at our exterior self-care, baths, massages, candles, and don't get me wrong, I'm down for all of that. But sometimes we have to focus on what's inside and how to care for our inner selves a little more. So in those 5 days, I gave 5 tips on caring for your inner self. I feel like the 2 that resonated the most with the audience or the community was, 1, it's okay to say no. And with no explanation. The second one was the importance of creating healthy boundaries. So those 2 were very well received, and they're very important points to talk about.
It's interesting that you talk about boundaries, and you've been kind of focusing on that a little bit lately because, well, we've all been in our own boundary here in this time of pandemic and quarantine, but in terms of emotional boundaries and what have you, mental boundaries, I've had a couple of conversations with friends recently about that, and thinking through that one of the ways that establishing and maintaining boundaries may be most difficult is with family. Or loved ones, and how one would overcome that. I can imagine that might be a little challenge, particularly as folks have been quarantined for their families now, in some cases for several months. So what would you kind of suggest or recommend to folks that are dealing with that right now?
So creating healthy boundaries and the challenge to do that with loved ones, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a challenge. It's a challenge more so, I believe, because we're close to them, we love them, and we don't want to hurt their feelings. So I would suggest, though, creating that boundary with a loved one is really the same as creating that boundary with anyone else. It can be done with love. That boundary first has to just be communicated, but communicated in a way that your family member or close friend or loved one will be open to receiving, why is this necessary? So it's all about communication and how you present that to your loved one. But it's still very important to have the boundaries, even when it is a loved one, because that frees you up. It gives you your energy, your space. It protects that so that you can care for that loved one in the way that you need to. Because we can't pour from an empty cup. So we always have to have something left in us to be able to pour and to care. And without creating boundaries, that's hard to do. That's very hard to do.
You cannot pour from an empty cup. That makes so much sense. If you're constantly giving and giving and giving, you don't have anything left.
Nothing
You know?
left. And especially as women, we are nurturers by nature. So we're always going to be pouring. That's just how it is. So if we're always pouring and our cup is half full, it's going to be empty most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So as women, I believe that we need to make sure our cup is overflowing, because when we're pouring, we want to always have something left for us. So there has to be time to refuel and to take care of ourselves so that we can continue to nurture and take care of others.
That makes a lot of sense. I would think that part of the process of and kind of fundamental to establishing boundaries at times is the other tip that you mentioned in terms of what you covered in the 5 for 5 is the little two letter sentence called no.
Right.
And learning how to say no.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about saying no.
Yeah. Saying no. Wow, it can be difficult because we feel like when we say no, that we're going to hurt someone's feelings. And although that's not our plan, we don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to keep in mind that, you're not responsible for how someone reacts to the no, or to that thing that you just don't want to do. But it is very important to still be able to say what it is that you will or won't do, and you don't always have to justify that with an explanation either.
That's a big point, because I think that even those of us that can sometimes be better about saying no than others do feel like, well, even when I do say no, I have to explain why. Right. Well, no, because. Well, no, you don't really have to explain. It's no. And I think that even in our culture, I think we're guilted. We get the guilt trip on, if you say no, the person is going to ask you why or why not.
Right.
And so I think we tend to offer that explanation right off the top, so we don't have to be met with that uncomfortable question.
Right. That's a societal norm that we're expected to explain our way through everything. But back to family members and loved ones, when you mentioned that before, that's saying it's hard to say no to them too, because again, we don't want to hurt their feelings, but it's about how you communicate it. You can be a kind and good-hearted person and still say no. But it's the way that you say it. It's all about the communication. You can say it with love, and eventually that will turn into a certain level of respect that people will have for you, because you're able to say no with love. And also, let me add, sometimes you have to say no to be able to say yes to the things that really matter to you.
That part.
One of the other tips I shared about caring for your inner self was learning what your values are, what's really important to you, and then how do you get more of that in your life. But if you say yes to everything all the time, you're not going to be able to have an opportunity to say yes to the things that really matter to you. So by saying no, you're creating the capacity for you to say yes to those things that really matter in life to you.
So your boundaries almost work two ways. It's to kind of insulate you in a certain way in terms of caring for yourself, but also to, in some instances, kind of distance yourself from someone else so that you can take some time away.
Right.
Yeah.
That's saying no, and those boundaries are all about protecting your energy and your space. And it's not in a selfish way. It's so that you can be better that you can be the best you need to be for your family and your friends and your loved ones and your job, every other thing that, is on our plates. So it does balance out.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely like the saying, you can't say yes to everything. You have to say no to some things so you can say yes to some of the things you value.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because if you have all dinner on your plate, then you can't get to dessert. And if you love dessert, you'll never get dessert.
That's right. So once you decide those things that really are important to you in life, my goodness, those are the things you want to fill your life with. But if you're always saying yes, you can't get to that. And, when we talk about even what God says about our lives, I don't believe God would have us be a doormat. He would want us to be able to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of others. As a matter of fact, in the Bible, there are 8 references to Jesus saying 2 commandments: love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And then secondly, love your neighbor as yourself. The only way that we can love our neighbor as ourselves is to love ourselves. There's so many other ways for us to love our neighbor, but we've got to create that space to do that. And if we don't love ourselves, we're not going to do things like forgive, show grace, serve, because we're not even loving ourselves. If we're not feeling good about who we are, we're not going to be able to do that. So those 2 commands that God gives us point to loving God, of course, with everything we have, and then loving ourselves. We've got to take care of ourselves first so that we can take care of others. How you always see, put your oxygen mask on first
before you help somebody else.
Yeah. So that's where I believe God would have us to look at that. And that includes friends, family members, loved ones. There's a purpose behind it. The self-care is not to be selfish and just say, too bad for everybody else. No, it's designed to create this capacity for you to love others as you would yourself.
I can see that being key to all the relationships, which is why it's a commandment, because God is love. And we know that we just have to continue to be at peace because
all is really well.
Yes, indeed. So this was our very first Connecting with the Coach, DMV Temperament Coach, Cheryl Bridges to Life. Looking forward to another conversation.
Yeah, so am I. Thank you so much. This time was great.